That's a magic number. Yes, it is. It's the magic number.
What does it all mean?
Hello and welcome to Flintoff, Savage and the Ping Pong Guy. That's me, Matthew Syed. Huge topics this week. Who are the most overrated and underrated people in the history of sport? Cheating, predominantly in football, and mental health in a sporting environment. Big thank you to everyone who's got in touch through the week using the hashtag FredSavSide. Please use that hashtag to suggest future topics. But before we get into the meat, let's find out, as we always do, what everyone's been up to over the last 7 days. Robbie.
Nothing.
Freddie.
Nothing? Come on,
no.
Nothing. You must have done something this
No,
week. What have you done? Stayed in bed all week?
I've had a lazy week, Fred. Bits and bobs.
Sir, your wife would say you have a lazy week every week.
Who put out the rubbish this week?
I put the bin out last night.
I did as well. Grey bin.
Grey bin last night, yeah. Grey bin is ones like with the cans and the paper and the toilet rolls.
Are you under an obligation to do that?
Yeah.
The local authority, or are you
got a green bin.
environmentally conscious?
You got a green bin with
Bit of both.
Green bins for flowers and stuff.
Flowers?
Yeah.
What, do you have a lot of flowers to fill a bin in your house?
But do you know what I mean? No
You're
flowers.
very romantic, Rob. Servers never said this. She just whinges about
It's
you.
your birthday yesterday, wasn't it?
I know, yeah.
Yeah, so we had flowers.
Yeah, did you have a nice night last night? You
Nice.
done nothing. You took your wife out for dinner last night for her birthday.
Yeah, we had a nice night, Andrew, didn't we?
Did you?
Yeah, we did.
You got a smile on your face today,
Oh,
Rob.
big smile.
Why are you raising an eyebrow
He's
there,
come
Robbie?
skipping into the studio today. Some would say he looks a bit lighter.
I'm a lot lighter this morning.
Hey!
Slightly flushed. Fred.
Swiftly moving on. I've had quite a busy week this week.
Uh-huh.
I had my first acting job this week, my first proper acting job.
Wow.
I
so
filmed-
you auditioned?
No, I didn't. I've auditioned for other stuff, but I can't talk about. But this one was my first job. I filmed a short.
A short?
A short.
A short what?
A short film.
Oh, well, what?
10 minutes.
Well, it was. Well, you're 6'5".
Oh, Robbie, it's not about how tall people are. I wasn't doing Snow White.
Oh, so what's a short? You
A
filmed a
short's
short.
like a short film. Have you not seen it? If you was in the industry, Rob, you'd know all about it. But you're not. You're not a thespian.
Is this something that we can get a chance to see?
Oh yeah, it's in the edit now.
Wow.
It's a bit weird.
Dave.
Yeah?
On Dave.
On Dave? No, I can't mention
UK
the channel.
TV
yeah?
Gold.
So we're getting hammered here. I was quite proud of it before I came in, and now I'm thinking about it. A 10-minute short. Was it any good? I had to film it on the beach. I had to learn all my lines. Turned up, and the director and the producers all a little bit nervous, thinking, "Can he act? What's he like, this lad?" And I really enjoyed
So
it.
who was it with? Was it with?
Well, there was a girl called Miranda Hennessy, who's a comedy actress, very good. And then the big one was.
Not a love scene. Not a love scene.
No love scene. Ooh, we're
Really?
not ready for that.
Oh.
The big one was. You remember Brookside? Mick Johnson.
Yes.
Mick Johnson in Brookside. Now, being a soap fan, I was working with Mick Johnson.
Bronson. Mick Bronson.
Charles Bronson. Mick Johnson, working with big Mick Johnson, Louis. And it was brilliant. I was in awe of this man.
Really?
He had to kick me off the beach.
So you filmed done dusted.
Done and dusted.
Wow.
In the edit now. Stand by your beds. It's going to be out in the next few weeks for summer.
Was it more nerve-wracking filming a scene with the guy from Brookside or playing for England in the Test?
Oh, with Brookside, I was looking at him thinking, you was in Brookside for 21 years, look at you. And he's good. Get off my beach. it was brilliant. It was good fun. I really enjoyed it. A lot of hanging around, though. Yeah. But I've been trained for that, playing cricket. I used to stand in a field all day. It was great. It was a day out of the house.
Okay, having told you my week last week and get told to
You got
put it
hammered
on
on
the
social
email,
media.
I got totally hammered. You both fell asleep, started snoring.
Let's have
I'm gonna
a brief version of what you've done.
Well, I've had a reasonably quiet week.
Brilliant. Thanks, Matthew. Moving on.
Okay, I'm going to take that advice and get on to what I think is one of the best topics we've ever had on this podcast. We discussed it briefly this time last week. Me and Robbie have talked about it a couple of times on the phone. Who are the most overrated and underrated people in the history of sport? And I think it'd be great to start with you, Fred, because I've got a suspicion you may well be mentioning some controversial choices.
Well, it's not controversial. You know the problem when you start talking about overrated and underrated? It's subjective.
Yep.
Yeah.
Everyone's got an opinion. And I'm going to go to what I know most. Yep. I'm going to go onto cricket.
Ooh.
And it's not going to be popular. There's going to be a few ruffled feathers out there. There's going to be a few people thinking...
I'll tell you who's breathing a sigh of relief right now. It's Steve Redgrave.
Oh, don't get me started. Don't get me started.
We can go back to that.
Don't get me started on the rowers. Oh, my word. I digress. Right, my first underrated.
Underrated.
Underrated. And I'm going for a collective. I'm not going for one person yet. I'm going for a collective team. And it is the England cricket team of the 1980s.
Underrated.
Sorry, overrated.
Yes,
I've got
I
this.
thought, yeah.
Overrated. What am I on about?
Overrated.
Do you know
the
what?
England cricket team
Do
of the 1980s.
you know what? Because it's so controversial, I'm getting in a pickle here. I don't know if I should say it.
Overrated.
Overrated, the 1980s. You get these guys and they walk around and they pontificate and they criticise and they talk about the current side that are playing for England and they harp on about our day. Our day was so much better.
Yep.
The players were better. We were fitter. We were faster. We were stronger. We had more characters. But the problem was, lads, you didn't win. You didn't win. It doesn't matter about being characters and how big your backdrop is on your head. It's about winning. The 1980s side, 15 losses in test matches. They won 9 times and they had 4 draws. This is the golden era. This is the.
They lost more than they won. The
They
80s
lost more
England
than they
cricket
won.
team.
This is
Wow.
statistically the worst period of English
What
cricket.
type of players?
Well, you
Educate
look
me.
at it, and then you look at the
It's going
sides.
to take a hell of a long time to educate
And
you, Robbie.
well,
Could be here all day.
We'll start at year 2.
Where's the Gruffalo?
Right, but when I mention the players, you'll think, no, this can't be so. This
Right.
can't be right. You're rhyming off names. These people live forever in our hearts.
Yeah. Who like?
Well, I'm struggling saying the first one because he's not overrated as a player.
Both of them.
Ian Botham, David Gower,
Whoa.
Gower.
Mike Gattin,
Gats.
Alan Lamb.
Hello, what a player he
yeah.
was.
What a play! I'm talking
Ballers.
about
Who are the
these-
ballers?
This is fascinating because you're right, it's subjective, but you've backed up
Graham Gooch.
Gucci.
3-3-3, didn't he?
Yeah.
3-3-3.
Oh, good knowledge, Matthew.
God
I'm
bless
amazed
him.
at that.
God bless him, Graham
Stands
Dilly.
on form today. Who?
Graham Dilly, God
Dilly.
bless him.
Yeah.
I think Bob Willis. Was he
Yeah.
around the 80s?
Yeah.
Yeah, Bob Willis. So you're talking about all these brilliant, brilliant cricketers that we revere. However, that period of cricket wasn't particularly good for England.
That is genuinely astonishing to me because when you think about
What, he's done some research?
him and Stan have done
Stanley.
some
Stanley.
because you think of that team, and the first thing that jumps into your mind is the Ashes victory, one of the most iconic in the history of the sport. That was the early
1981 at
1981.
Headingley.
But you don't realise, as you've rightly pointed out, that the statistics show that over the decade they lost more than they won. And Lamb, both them, Gower, Gooch, these are icons of the game, but they're not. How many of these would get into the 2005 Ashes winning England team?
Well, both of them.
Yeah.
Straight in there. But then I'd have to miss out, wouldn't I? So both of them are coming for
Well,
me.
you could both play.
Do you know what? The other one, Graham Gooch.
Yeah.
Graham Gooch, definitely.
Yeah.
Probably 4. And it's not a... Ian Bell became one of England's best ever players. But at the time, if you're looking at 2005, independently, you'd say Graham Gooch for Ian Bell.
Yeah.
After that, I'm struggling. I wouldn't swap Steve Armisen for anyone. I wouldn't swap Simon Jones. I wouldn't swap Matthew Hoggard, Marcus Trescothic,
Brilliant player.
Kevin Peterson,
Yeah.
Geraint Jones, the keeper. What a part he played in that side. So, 1980s, the 1990s, actually, when I was saying statistically, the 80s, the 90s might have been worse.
Really.
But we don't revere that side.
No.
So they're not really overrated or underrated. It was what it was.
Yeah.
They had 8 wins and 15 losses and 4 draws. And then when you come, this is a tricky one, but when you come to overrated
Individuals.
the one that I can come up with, and I'm putting it, I regard myself as probably one of the worst England captains. And I'm quite frank about
You've
it.
been open about that.
I was rubbish. I was rubbish. I tried my best, but it just didn't work out. Sometimes you've got to hold your hands up and say, just not
Give
for
it a
me.
go.
I give it a go. It wasn't for me. And I won 2 matches as England captain. All right.
How many tests?
Probably 10 or 11, I think. 2, so...
20%.
Mike Gattin. Right, Mike Gattin. Big Mike. Oof, he eats this fella. Right, Mike Gattin. He was England captain, right, for 23 matches.
Yeah. A famous England captain.
I'm going to ask you, how many games do you think Mike Gattin won as captain?
13.
I would say.
The reason I think that is I think of
13?
Gatting,
You need to be one
I'm
of the best.
thinking him arguing with that umpire,
Yeah,
Shaq
Michael
O'Rana,
Brown, yeah.
strong, disciplined, determined captain. If you're going to tell me it's less than 6, I'm going to be shocked.
I'm going
Robbie.
to say 10.
No. Do you know how many he won as captain? The exact same number as me.
2.
2 matches.
That's not right.
2 matches. He won 2 matches.
Stan, when you do the research, you've actually got to go onto the internet, not just invest.
No, I'll be honest with you, I knew this. I knew he only won 2. I wasn't aware that he had that many matches as 23 as captain. He lost 5 and drew 16, which equates to an 8.69% success rate as captain.
Fred.
Wow.
But he did win against Australia in the Ashes. But again, Australia weren't the best team in the world then. It was the West Indies. The West Indies were the team. Australia, they had World Series cricket. A lot of the players went and played in that, all the best ones. So we won the Ashes a few times. The side to beat were the West Indies. And we just getting our pants pulled down by them.
This is why this is such a good topic, because perception and reality can diverge so graphically. Gatting.
Do
I'm
you know
amazed
what?
at that.
I just want to put out there, this is not a crack at people. And it's not like having a go at folk.
Yeah.
I'm just pointing out facts.
Yeah.
You give me the subjects, I've researched it best I can come up with. But I will reiterate, I was rubbish as captain as well.
Okay.
And probably overrated.
you said that.
I was overrated. And nobody thought it was any good.
Robbie, I want to come to you for overrated. Can I just throw in a wild card here as an underrated?
Yeah.
Now, people are going to say this is ridiculous, but here I want to compare the perception with the reality. And I want to talk about Tim Henman, because for me, the perception of Tim Henman is loser. You mention his name to certain audiences and they start laughing. He's like the archetypal, plucky, British underperformer. For me, this is a guy who wasn't that talented, was in a tough era of grass court tennis up against Pete Sampras. He got to 6 Grand Slam semi-finals, got to number 4 in the world. I think, we've talked about Robbie maximising his talent, somebody who trained hard to get into the Premier League and did the best he could be. I think Henman is like that. And I think it's really unfair that this guy got into the top 4 of the world.
Yeah, fair
when
play.
you mention his
top 4,
top 4, he got
Tim
to 4
Henman,
in the
top
world.
4.
Yeah. And
Come on,
people
Tim,
laugh.
with his fist pump.
You've got his
Top
bat.
4.
You've got his bat. His racket.
I got. You
got
give me 3
racket.
rackets.
Yeah.
So I have to say it's good.
Yeah.
I said I'd give it you, that, because you play
I've got
tennis.
it.
I can't stand it.
I've got it.
We've got to get together for tennis. Robbie, for
Can I just add on Tim Henman?
Yep.
Do you know what? When you put it like that, I think, because I used to watch Wimbledon, right? If I had no else to do. And it'd be on telly.
Strawberries and
Right, and I went once. So, don't get me on it. And Tim Henman, he had Henman Hill.
Yeah.
And I was watching it thinking, why? He's not going to win. Why is he can't win it. He's not going to win it. And you get to a semi or something and he get knocked out. You think, well, fair dues. But when you put it like that, I don't know about tennis skill or tennis like that. You obviously know more than me. And someone who gets every ounce, like we've spoken about Robbie, he's underrated.
Yeah,
he is.
Do you know what he is? He's best mates with Jamie Redknapp. And do you know you get an impression of best mates, play golf together and all sorts. And you know you get an impression of someone by what you see on the TV. And all I could think of was, "Come on, Tim," and he pumps his fist, and you think, "Come on, lad, get a grip." But when you meet him, he is a cracking lad.
He's nice.
He's
lovely.
He's a great lad.
Yeah.
And he's also really smart talking about the psychology of sport, because people said he used to choke. He wasn't able to hold it together under pressure at Wimbledon. But he was playing Sampras, one of the best
Jim
grass court
Courier,
players of
I know,
all
was he was
time.
playing more
He
Jim
lost to
Courier.
Ivanisevic, wasn't it, that one time when
Go
there was
on.
that rain delay. But
Serve
Henman was
volley,
saying...
go on the east and
Agassi.
Yeah, great play,
Yeah.
for sure. But what Henman would say is, I had the whole of the nation on my back, massive scrutiny, and it was also like this...
Sounds like
that-
an excuse a bit, that. But
Yeah, a little bit. But he said that when he played Sampras, he played as well as he could play. He just wasn't good enough.
You've got another tennis one saying overrated. Who's that?
Oh, now this one. And I need a bit of time to
I hope
justify
this is good. Well, hurry up.
why has he brought a laptop in today?
Get on with it.
Who's he trying to
Steffi.
kid?
Yeah.
You're not doing a
Steffi.
PowerPoint presentation here now. You've done your speech this
Stan,
morning and taken
Stan
the cash.
doesn't give me any notes.
You're meant to be clever when you don't need them. Hang on a minute. Matthew Syed, author of books, bound,
Stan.
black box thinking and something else, and you're relying on a 20-year-old history student to supply you with notes. That's what me and Robbie are here for,
That's why
Matthew.
you've got
Raise
your
your game when you come
brilliant-
in
okay,
prepared.
all
Don't
right.
turn up trying to wing it willy-nilly. Will you get a
Don't
grip
really
of
close
this?
the laptop.
We're dropping down the ratings because of you. Right, tennis, let's get back to it.
Okay. Steffi Graf, voted the greatest female tennis player of all time at the end of the last century. 22 Grand Slams. She won the Golden Slam. But in my opinion, she wasn't even the best tennis player of her era. So Monica Seles, who was one of her big rivals, got
Graf.
the better of Graf.
Yeah.
She was better. She was winning. She won the Australian Open at the beginning of 1993. Then some crazed fan stabbed her,
remember that,
and
yeah.
that's when Graf started to dominate again. So for me, she can't be described as the best of all time when she wasn't as good as her fiercest.
Well, she
fiercest
can't
rival.
help it that she started
No, of
beating
course.
everyone because
You
someone
can't
got
say she's
stabbed.
overrated, though, Matty. That's
Well,
nonsense.
it's a perception and reality. She is not, for me, the best female tennis player of
She's
all
not
time.
overrated, though.
No.
Well, she is in relation to that epithet. If
What-
people
what
say
about-
she's
the
the
what?
best,
Epithet.
that
Look at
that
me.
What's-
description.
Look at me.
What was that word?
I can keep up with him
epithet.
most times, but he's done me there.
Epithet.
He's done me. Stanley's probably give him that word.
Yeah. Wow, Steffi Graf, I disagree.
What about Martina Navratilova?
Oh,
I think the perception and the reality are both spot on.
I met her once.
Yeah, me too. She's brilliant.
She was amazing. I don't know if she followed cricket, but she'd learned all about us, and she was amazing. Big fan.
She had learnt about your.
Well, she must have done. Must have known that I'd be meeting her.
right.
Yeah.
Because I opened something with her, and then she was brilliant, chatting to me about my career. And I think, hang on, Martina, this is. How do you know this?
And
She
she's
said,
also-
she's brilliant.
She's done a lot also for women's rights and gay rights. Quite a brilliant campaigner in addition to a fantastic sports person. But Robbie Sam.
Come on, Robbie.
I'm
I'm
going-
waiting now with
For
bated
the first
breath.
time ever.
Overrated. Pep Guardiola.
Guardiola.
Right, people
You'll have the
th-
City fans on to you now.
This
I
is
tell
as
you.
a manager,
as
right?
a manager. And I think he was underrated as a player. What a fantastic football player, by the way. Underrated as a football player.
Yep.
Get off
Overrated
the fence,
as a
Rob.
manager.
Come on, Rob.
The
Don't-
reason
don't
being...
backtrack. Come on.
Overrated as a
Spit it
manager.
out, spit
The
it
reason
out.
being... His squad, when he took over as manager for Barcelona, let me just tell you about the forward players he had. He had Samuel Eto'o, Thierry Henry, Messi, in midfield, Iniesta, Busquets.
Who?
Busquets.
You got him?
Yeah. Yaya Toure. He had Piqué, Puyol.
Yep.
This is one of his first sides he had to manage, and not being funny, but those Eto'o, Messi,
Don't worry, you're not.
and Eto'o, Messi, Henri. Matthew, I'm not being funny. I could have won.
Still not.
Right? Look at his
Could you be funny?
Look at his Bayern Munich side.
Yeah.
Mandzukic, Muller, Pizarro, Robin, Schweinsteiger. I mean, he took over the side who won the treble
Yeah.
the year before. Goes to Man City. How many points are they behind Chelsea at this moment
Can I
in
ask
time?
a question?
That's a great shout.
Do you know? You mentioned that. Do you know what Man City?
Yeah.
Has he not got just as good a squad at his disposal as he had done previously? Is the squad at Man City? I don't know.
Yeah.
Is the squad as good as what he's used to? Is that what you're saying?
No, I would say it's the squad.
So he's having to
Good
manage
point,
now.
good point.
He's having to manage now. His management skills are being tested.
This is probably his worst group of players he's had in his managerial career.
Really?
That's a good- I would say.
yeah.
Well, when you look at
would you
how
say?
oh yeah, for sure. When you look at Munich and Barcelona,
Yeah.
but wouldn't you say, Robbie, that it's quite tough to inherit a group of star players, big egos, people who fancy themselves rightly, and to manage them in such a way that they maximise their potential? Because when he was with Barcelona, they were epic.
Yeah. But listen, people say about his philosophy. People love watching Man City. People love watching Barcelona. What he does with the fullbacks, he brings the fullbacks inside to play midfield, and it's sometimes to watch it's brilliant. But has he won a trophy this year? No. I would suggest this season Jose Mourinho has had a better season than Pep Guardiola. Because he's won a trophy, and people say the league, it's only the League Cup, it's a trophy, right? And I believe they'll win the Europa League. So that'd be 2 trophies, I think. It might not happen for Manchester United. Man City will finish probably now in the top 4, but Man City finishing in the top 4,
Is that a failure?
I think it's a failure. I think for Manchester City this year, no trophies, and if they finish 3rd or 4th, I think that's a terrible season for supposedly the greatest coach, and to be that far behind Chelsea, a Chelsea side. By the way, have got Moses at so they play 3-4-3 Chelsea. Moses on the right.
Freddie's nodding along to that.
Yeah, but so the formation for 3 at the back, 4 midfield, 3 at front.
Got that.
And the two wide players in the 4 are Alonso, who play for Sunderland, Bolton, and they got Moses, who had about 6 or 7 loan clubs. So the Conte's got the best out of those group of players, and they will storm the league. And you've got the greatest coach supposedly in the world, who's 11, 12, 13 points behind them.
Sav, I'm guessing that a lot of aspiring managers are looking at Guardiola and thinking that guy is so lucky. I would have to, first of all, work in non-league football, work my way up the leagues, and if everything goes to plan, if I'm successful with every single club, I might get a Premier League club. Not one at the top like Guardiola's got. But do you think there are different skill sets to managing in the lower echelons of football to what you need to be managing one of the best teams in the world?
I think so, because people say about Ryan Giggs. Ryan Giggs, could he manage? So people say about these top players now, Fred. So, for instance, Ryan Giggs, that I'm just thinking, like Steven Gerrard, for instance, Frank Lampard. If they want to start their career, you hear a lot on social media, a lot of other people saying, well, they should start in League Two and make their way up. What do those players know about that level of football?
Yeah.
They've played at the top all their lives.
Yeah.
This is what I don't get. So, okay, morally, the right thing would be to do to tell her, I'm going to go and manage, just say Doncaster or Yeovil Town and learn the new skill of managing. But what do those players know about that level?
Okay, but
just on that, on Pep Guardiola, as a complete layman, what are his strengths? What does Pep Guardiola bring?
Oh, fluid, great football, pleasing on the eye, goals, taking chances, risks. Likes the goalkeeper playing out from the back.
I don't understand that.
I don't understand
fellow
it.
with short sleeves, bravo. he's good with his feet, but he can't catch. I'm not being funny, but I'm just pointing out.
On goalkeepers, here's one for you. Here's one for you. Quick one. We'll just throw a couple in now. Overrated, David Seaman.
No way.
Overrated.
No way.
David
No
Seaman.
way. Not spunky.
Say fans, my arse.
Wow.
Say fans, my arse. Seriously.
Justify
say
that.
fans, justify
David Seaman.
David Seaman.
Statistics.
What do you remember David Seaman for, Matthew? I remember him.
Fantastic.
Naeem,
Moustache.
Naeem.
and Ronaldinho free kick. Did he get close to one of those German penalties?
One
David
thing you're talking about. You're talking about David Seaman.
Any chance? Put his hands in his gloves now
I'm
and again.
sorry, you can say things about people,
Outrageous.
but never spunky.
What?
You leave spunky alone.
Say so. Overrated.
What about underrated?
Wayne Rooney.
Yeah.
Underrated Rooney.
I'm a
Not
Rooney fan.
You're not saying that he's underrated now. You mean over the arc of his career, he's
Underrated.
achieved more than
Love
people
to hate him, don't they, Wayne Rooney?
Underrated.
Love to hate
Matthew, he's Manchester United's greatest ever goal scorer.
Yep.
He's England's greatest ever goal scorer. Yet, everybody seems to still have a pop for him, have him. He's not the same player he was, I think. And people say, why is he not like Messi? Why is he not like Ronaldo? Well,
He's not.
them two are a different planet. So I'm going, Wayne Rooney, massively underrated.
Fred, tell me if this is a fair one for overrated. I'm thinking Nasser Hussain. You see him on TV. He's a great pundit. He pontificates, to use your word,
I love that
brilliantly.
word, pontificate.
And yet I went and had a look at his test average. I thought he would be up with the Gowers and the Trescothics in the mid-40s. He's 37.
Yeah.
I was genuinely surprised by that.
Do you know what with Nasser? And I've been quite open about this. I had no relationship with him. We don't particularly get on, or we didn't get on.
Oh,
Me and Nasser.
really?
Really? You sound surprised.
He's the only
I
one.
tell you what, he's got a nose that rival yours, though.
Why are you looking at Matthew?
But do you know the one thing about Nasser? And I'll defend him here.
Good captain.
Not for me.
Uh-huh.
However, I'm going to stop saying that. I do it every week, don't I?
What?
However. I go, however.
And
Like, I'm going to say
pontificate.
something really...
I say
I'm not
alluded
being-
to.
Oh,
People have been pointing out.
Not being funny.
Every single podcast, you say it 20 times.
But
I was
back
going to allude to that
Back
earlier.
to Nasser, I think he's a fantastic pundit. Because he reads a game,
Yeah.
he sees a game.
Yeah.
And sometimes as a pundit, I'm sure you see things you wouldn't see as a player. So I'm not going to go on about that. Do you know what? As a player, I think they've got him pretty much spot on. I think, he averaged 37.5 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I don't think within cricketing circles he's been perceived to be any better than that. I don't think he's been put in the Trescothics league.
Yeah.
As a captain, it's hard as a captain. I'm sure that if you speak to Nasser now about his captaincy, he would have done it differently.
Mm-hmm.
He was so tough on himself. He was tough on the team. Didn't let the team breathe.
Yeah.
But
That could be a problem.
I think that was a sign of the times. He was captaining an average team.
No,
So with
no.
Nasser, but one I'm going to say, just
Yeah.
one is
Chuck a couple in, Fred. Chuck a couple of quick
do you know what
fire
I'm
ones
gonna
in.
chuck in? It was a bit of an enigma because depends who you speak to. Some will say overrated, some say underrated. I say he is brilliant. Steven Gerrard.
Yeah.
For Liverpool, Amazing, amazing football at one club. I love that. I love the fact that he stayed at one club. Yeah. He swore his allegiance to the side he wanted to play for, and he played for him all the career. There'd have been these other teams coming in saying, come on, play.
With Chelsea a bit.
Just to get his wages up, I'm sure. He was never leaving. So all these other teams came in and he could have gone for won more trophies, more accolades, but he didn't. And people judge him on his trophy cabinet. I know he won a Champions League and they probably...
I know how he feels, Fred.
And I know, Robbie, you must feel his pain.
Feel his pain.
So some people think Steven Gerrard's overrated. I say no. Yeah. I say no.
Yeah, he did show great loyalty, didn't he?
Michael Carrick. Underrated.
I agree. I've got him down on my laptop, underlined in bold. Agree with that.
He's the one for you.
I want to hear a golfer, Robbie.
Ian Poulter.
Ooh,
overrated.
Overrated.
Yeah. Overrated.
Why?
Ryder Cup. Absolute. Ryder Cup comes on. I want Ian Poulter in my side. I really do. Ian Poulter, magnificent in the Ryder Cup. But not being funny.
You're still not.
Keep saying that. Yeah. Listen, and Ian Poulter, I think he's won. Let me just count. I've done my research. The Italian Open 2002, Volvo World Match Play 2011, the WGC Dell Technologies Match Play 2010. I've got them all. He's won about 10 trophies, but I think overrated.
Never won a major.
Never won a major.
Colin
Montgomery, overrated.
Yeah, well, I'd go along with that.
I'm not getting into Colin Montgomery. I've got a bit of history there. I'm going to leave it.
Come on.
No. One story I'm not telling.
All right.
Okay, we'll say
Lee Westwood.
What?
Underrated, overrated?
Overrated. It's the same thing with Montgomery. The acid test of whether you're a great golfer is whether you win the majors. Montgomery never won a major.
Boxers. Tell you what, the most underrated ever for me, Joel Kawasaki. 47
and 46 and 0 was it?
46 and 0.
He fought everyone. Brilliant. He fought everybody. Yeah. And the one at the minute who's the biggest underrated, take away what he says, take away his behaviour.
I know it.
Tyson Fury.
Yeah. Tyson Fury. Do you know when we
underrate him at your pedal?
Got to tell you, when we sent out that hashtag, who would you most like to see as a guest on the podcast? The most number of votes went to Tyson Fury.
Get him on. Get him on. Come on, Tyson.
Come on, Mike.
Any more? What about? I tell you what, Gary Neville. Underrated.
I thought you were going to say Gary Sobers.
Gary Neville's brilliant. Just ask him.
I think
under or over?
I think underrated.
Yeah, brilliant.
One of the best fullbacks in the world, Matthew.
Brilliant.
You think he was underrated as a player?
So. I think so.
When he retired from Manchester United, people said he was the best right back in Premier League history. I went back and watched a lot of the
in
United
world
games.
football.
Got to tell you, he was nowhere near as good as Dennis Irwin on the other side. Irwin was a better player than Neville. I think Neville was a very, very good player. Definitely not underrated. I think people think he was excellent.
Could be a all day.
It's a great topic, that.
But Freddie, just one tiny little phrase on Sir Stephen
Redgrave.
What is he? Is he overrated or underrated?
Do you know what, right? I'm going to put my cards on the table now with Stephen Redgrave. Sir Stephen Redgrave. I'm going to put my cards on the table. Right. Do you know what I like about Steve Redgrave? And I've said it before. He probably tried.
Yeah, exactly. Silence.
No, he probably tried all the sports. He probably tried all of them, and then got on that sliding scale and thought, you know what? I've tried everything. I'll try rowing. I'm a big lad. I'm strong. I'll pull a stick.
You've had an email.
Oh yeah.
You've had an email.
I didn't have an email.
Big one.
What was it?
I've had a direct message on Twitter. On Twitter, I follow British Rowing because I went down there with League of Their Own last year, and we went down to British Rowing. They looked after us really well. We did a bit of a funny sketch with them, and then I followed them after, and they were lovely people. And then I got this direct message of a day from British Rowing. I felt really bad. They were saying, "We're really pleased that you talk about rowing on your podcast and get it out there in the public eye, even if it's not in a positive way." Right? We're just happy we're talking about it. That's the measure of the sport. Even when you're bagging it, they're happy, right? Just to get a bit of airtime. So they said, "Why don't you come down?" And it was a really nice thing. Come down and show us what we do, and we'll show you how we do it, and come and have a day out at the rowing. And I didn't know how to reply to it. I said, "Oh, what I'll do next week, I'll talk about it and talk it up." And do you know what? Thinking about it, do you know what I like about rowing? And this is not a criticism of rowing, is that anyone can do it.
Yeah.
Anyone can row. You got them things in gym, you can row, and you can go out and we've seen it.
Do you think you could? Do you think, because you hammer rowing and you hammer...
I don't hammer it. Yeah, I have an opinion.
Yeah,
gently.
And Redgrave, obviously, was one of the greatest Olympians ever, but anybody. You just said anybody could do it. Would you? Do you reckon you could beat Sir Steve Redgrave
tell you
in a
what.
2,000 metre row on one of those machines?
What? Now?
Yeah.
I think it'd be close.
Well, close. What you're seriously
think you
saying?
would do?
What I'm saying is, right, Steve Redgrave won 5 gold medals.
Yeah.
He was in his 50s on the last one, wasn't he?
Was he?
Yeah. Well, no. He's probably in his 50s now.
Oh, is he? So he's in his 50s.
He's a fit man.
Yeah, he's a big lad.
And his technique is awesome. He's the same size. He'd
Incredible
batter you.
motivational speaker. He probably
He'd
give
batter
himself
you.
a pep talk.
He'd
He's
batter you.
55, by the way.
I'm not saying I could definitely beat him.
You
But
think
what?
you've got a chance?
So you got a chance.
I'll tell you what, that is a challenge right
Yeah.
now
Hang on
that
a
goes
minute,
out.
hang on a
The,
minute. Whoa,
the
whoa.
British Rowing Association,
Yeah.
listen to this podcast because
Yeah.
I've
How
seen
about-
the email that the direct message they sent to Fred. Steve Redgrave, if you're listening out there,
Freddie's
we
challenging
will
you.
set up 2 erg machines
Yeah.
at
No,
Salford
whoa,
Quays,
whoa.
and Freddie
Whoa,
Flintoff,
whoa,
who trains every
whoa.
day,
Hang
will
on,
take you down. Robbie,
hang on a
I'm
minute.
betting on Fred,
Can I have
mate.
a speech? Can I say something?
Yeah, of course
Because
you can.
you're talking about
Why are your
me,
veins sticking out your neck?
Because I'm tensing. Come on, Steve. I'll have you. No, but 2 ergo machines, right?
Yeah.
Well, what are you two going to be doing? I want to
We'll
see
be playing
Matthew's
ping
big
pong at
arms.
the
No,
side.
you're having a. If I'm doing this, you're having a go.
I'll
and
take
you're
Matthew
having a
on.
go.
Yeah, me and Rob, we'll have a
I'll
side
race
bet.
Matthew.
Yeah, done.
So basically, you
So
were
I'm gonna
challenging.
rate Steve Redgrave.
You're challenging.
I go 5-time gold medalist,
Yeah.
Sir Steve Redgrave. What we're playing
I
for
reckon
is knighthood. If you do us a favour, we need to set a date. Then I'll know to have breakfast that morning.
Well, I think we should get in touch with Sir Steve.
Tell you what, why don't we climax the podcast? We've got a run of 20 shows. Why don't we do the 20th show if
Yeah.
Redgrave is free?
Steve, if you fancy it,
Get
I'm
it
a big
together.
fan. I'm a
Yeah,
big
there
fan.
you go.
Okay, topic
Not for
number...
everyone, rowing.
The At Home with Colin Murray podcast.
Hello, I'm Colin Murray, and in this 5 Live podcast, I'm either going to be opening up my door or going round to the houses of a famous name in sport. I'm kind of hoping that the relaxed environment's going to loosen things up a little, and by the end of each episode, we'll have a real insight into the character of each interviewee. This week, I'm going to visit Gary Lineker.
My golf's like my football, useless from long range, very good close in. I would say that I'm probably more disliked now than I've ever been, and probably more liked now than I've ever been.
At Home with Colin Murray. Download and subscribe to the podcast using your usual podcast app or at bbc.co.uk/5live.
Topic number 2, massive one this, highly controversial. A lot of people have strong opinions. Cheating in football. This is yours, Robbie.
Well, it's been brought to light this week when,
You commended it
Every
in the
week.
newspaper.
I didn't commend cheating.
you
See,
did.
for me, Freddie, cheating is when you throw yourself over fresh air. So if there's nobody near you and what are you laughing at?
The way you put that.
I tell you what,
Throw yourself... In other words, when there's no contact.
No
at all.
contact.
I reckon
for
they're
me.
going to change the rules in the FA handbook
Right.
here. When
No
you throw
contact.
yourself over
Right.
fresh air.
Let's take a couple. Let's take 3 incidences. That's the word. What's the word?
Incident.
Incidences.
He told me to raise my game on this
3
podcast.
incidents. Let's take 3 incidents from the last week, which made me write about in my newspaper column.
Yep.
So the Marcus Rashford one,
Yep.
right? People were saying, it's bang out of order. But I was at the game and I seen the linesman's view and the referee. The referee couldn't see it. The linesman was looking across it. He could see the goalkeeper first. Rashford running high speed. The keeper comes out silly, like quick, very quick, dives at Rashford's feet. Rashford seeing the goalkeeper coming. If he leaves his foot on the floor, right? Yeah, and the keeper smashes into him, he could get hurt. So Rashford, I thought, was very clever, Matthew. Seeing the contact was going to come, and then he initiated contact with the goalkeeper.
Yep.
Would that be fair?
Yep.
Goes down, high speed, to me it looks like a penalty. So he's given the referee a decision to make. Is there a law, is there a rule at this minute in time to say, do you know what, you can't do that?
I don't know.
You're not supposed. No, simulation is not supposed to be a part of the game. You're not allowed to dive. If you dive, you get a yellow card.
for
And
me,
let's just rewind to that briefly.
Yeah.
What was Fabianski was the keeper, wasn't he?
Fabianski, and he pulled
so
his arms
Rashford
away.
is running in.
Yeah.
Fabianski is diving towards the ball, realises he's not going to make
Yeah.
it, pulls out,
Yeah.
and then Rashford starts to fall over before contact, exaggerates the fall with
Yeah.
an unnatural movement of his right leg.
Yeah.
That was clearly cheating.
I've said, Matthew, if I was on Rashford's side, it was 0-0, 1-0, they go in 1-0 half-time, score a penalty. I'm giving Rashford a big pat on the back.
Really?
for cheating.
If I'm in his side, yeah.
Would you have patted him
I
on
am.
the back if he had taken some performance-enhancing drugs, managed to run a bit faster, and scored a couple more
Not
goals?
the same. That's not the
What-
same.
what- tell me, what's the
Completely and
difference?
utterly
Why is one of them
ridiculous
unethical
statements.
and the other one
That's
is?
a
We'll give him a pat on the back for
ridiculous
cheating.
statement.
Go on, explain the difference morally
Well-
between those two things. They're both
See-
against the rules. They're both gaining an unfair advantage. What's the moral distinction between them?
Well, I love it when you two get stuck in.
Seriously,
Come on.
but
It's like tennis, this.
Well, you can resort to other countries. You know, in other countries, Italy or Spain, you know, South America, that's all part and parcel of the game. Why is it different in this country then? Because why is it different in this country? I'm hearing pundits now saying, "Oh, the future generation, the kids of today, see the greats on the telly, and they'll all be doing it." Tell you what, I've watched 450 kids football matches in the last 8 years. I've never seen one player dive. Never seen one player
There is
dive.
a lot of hypocrisy.
Never seen one
amongst-
player dive. What I'm saying, Matthew, if I was on Rashford's side, I'd be saying half time, "Well done, kid."
Yeah,
If I was on Swansea's team, I'd be raging.
yeah.
That's how it is. Coutinho stays on his feet, Liverpool Palace.
Yep.
Gets fouled, stays on his feet, doesn't go down. No penalty given. Why?
Yep.
Why? Until referees start giving penalties for people staying on their feet, why don't you exaggerate the fall? Why don't you go down?
Do you know, I agree
Part and
with...
parcel of the game.
I agree with...
There's a lot of people out there, hang on, there's a lot of people out there who now say, "Oh, shocking, 5-game ban, this and that." But hang on, how many pundits out there have never tried to bend the rules?
Right.
If you appeal for a throw-in, a corner, and sometimes you know it's the opposition's, you still appeal for it. You were Desmond Douglas. You cheated with Desmond Douglas.
Yeah, but I'm not trying to justify it. I was saying how
Well, you did at the
ashamed I
time.
felt all these years
Oh,
later.
well, you tried to do it. You done it.
I agree with that, and I agree with you about
It
the
crossed your mind.
Of course it does. Of course it crosses one's mind. But the hypocrisy of some of the pundits, I think, is a really powerful point. Michael Owen, you hear him criticising people who dive. 1998, the most blatant dive, and one of the most blatant dives in international football for England against Argentina, gets the penalty. He dived 4 years later against Argentina. What makes it really hypocritical is England fans, they don't get up in their arms about that dive because it benefited the England team.
Maradona's hand.
Maradona's hand they got up in arms about because it didn't benefit the England team. Fans, when the ball hits a player, an opposition player in the middle of the chest, they all shout, "Handball!" And they're saying that there's dishonesty in
Do you
football.
agree with me?
Well, I agree that there is hypocrisy amongst the pundits. There's hypocrisy amongst the fans. Nothing will change until the fans start getting onto their own players who dive. Otherwise, they're going to go back to the dressing room. They're going to be heroes. What I disagree with you on, Robbie, is that it's morally okay to dive over fresh air, to use your expression, but it's not okay to take performance-enhancing drugs. What's the difference between those two?
Is that a question again? Say the
Well,
question again.
it's like how far do you go with cheating? It's like you either
Fred,
cheat
hang on,
or you.
Fred,
No.
You can't say.
I'm not defending anyone. I'm just here, mate.
But
I'm
hang
just
on.
here. I'm enjoying this. What I'm saying is,
Matthew.
your subject is cheating.
Surely it's
Hang
gamesmanship.
on. Your subject's cheating, and you're talking about cheating. And then what Matthew's saying is, well, how far does it go before cheating becomes unacceptable? Is cheating not unacceptable, full stop?
Exactly.
Or is the extremities you can
Surely,
take it? You get to a point where you.
Fred.
Yeah,
surely,
that's all I'm asking. I don't know.
surely, exaggerating the fall is gamesmanship versus taking drugs.
What's the
and cheating.
difference?
Okay.
What's the difference between gamesmanship and cheating?
Hang on,
define
gamesmanship,
it.
hang
Just
on.
define
In
it.
cricket then,
Listen,
in-
mate, hang
in-
on. I'm just define it.
I've said Rashford has made the referee and the lines make a decision.
Yeah.
In cricket, you've said, and in previous podcasts, you wait for the umpire's decision. If you've nicked it,
Yeah.
you won't walk. You wait for the, but you know you've nicked it. What's
Yeah,
the
but
difference?
what
Taking drugs or nicking the ball?
Do you know what I'm going to say here about that?
What?
Is
Can't wait.
I've been given out when I've not been out, which is fine, and I've also been given not out when I'm out. Right, so I've nicked it behind a few
Yeah,
times.
and you've not walked.
And
I've
they balance each other.
They balance each
Well,
other.
I've been given penalty.
But do you know what? I don't know if that's gamesmanship
What is it then?
or cheating. The way I justify it is the umpire's there to make a decision. That's his job.
Yeah, like
he makes a
the
decision.
referee was against Rashford.
But really, it's probably cheating.
But you didn't walk.
No, I did heck.
Well then.
What?
So okay then. So what's the difference of nicking the ball, not walking, or taking drugs in cricket?
Huh?
Yeah, see, it's a difficult question, isn't it? That's
Well,
why I got flummoxed.
I think morally, there's a massive difference.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, man.
Okay.
Go away. Go on, back in your box.
Rob,
I'm not.
Here's a bit I
Matthew, I'm
agree with
sweating
you
here
on.
because that's like I'm sweating when drugs are getting involved. I don't know what to say. I don't want to get sacked.
Let me say one bit that I agree with you on. Defenders, against the rules, will have little tugs at the shirts of attacking players. They'll have a little dig. and that's against the rules. But if the attacking player doesn't go down and exaggerate the fall, they're never going to get the decision. So I think that is okay because they are highlighting a transgression that the referee wouldn't otherwise see. That isn't cheating. What is cheating is when there is no contact whatsoever.
I agree.
And therefore, there should be no foul, there should be no penalty, but somebody like Rashford goes flying. And what I meant about
there was contact with Rashford.
No, there wasn't.
There was.
Well, there was an unnatural movement. That's like deliberately barging into someone on the other side of the pitch in order to...
He was avoiding contact.
He was conning the referee.
He was avoiding contact.
Robbie, the point I was making about the hypocrisy is this won't change until the fans start getting onto their own players
that's
who are
never going to
diving.
happen.
In which case, I think-
managers saying, look, lad, come on, sort yourself out.
But why is it the fans come on to
have a bit of
606
personal
and
pride. You're just falling over. You're falling over.
Exactly.
Referee gives a decision. They all run up shouting at him, and they know full well that he's offside or not offside. They know full well. I've got my thread back here. They know full well what the decision is, but they still feel the need to try and get one over on the referee and cheat.
What's it like in cricket? What's the sort of dressing room dynamic when somebody has clearly edged the ball and hasn't walked, or someone's taken a catch on the half volley, has claimed the catch?
Do you know what? The half volley thing I did once, and I've mentioned it in previous podcasts, that has gone out the game. Mm-hmm. Do you know one of the sad things, and I probably added to this by doing what I did, is that I have never caught a ball and not known if it's bounced or not. You know. So all this nonsense when you go to referrals and the umpires and all this or that, I was always of the thought is, if I'd done it, just say to the fielder, mate, have you caught it? And then it's in his ball. He knows, because you feel it. You know where it's at your hands. You know exactly if you've caught it or not. And all this nonsense about wicket keepers, well, they got gloves on. Who cares they got gloves on? They know if they've caught it or not. Yeah. Ask the fielder.
But in cricket now, that's changed because of the technology.
Yeah. But the technology is inconclusive. You can catch one and it makes it look like it's bounced on technology.
Weird,
it's so strange. But getting back to...
What about just one tiny one? What about the sweets in the pocket in cricket?
Come on. Well, there's this theory, wasn't there? You put a sweet in... This is why Marcus Trescothick was a bit big. He used to suck on mints all day at first slip. And then you rub it on the ball and it makes a real nice shine on the ball.
Yeah.
So then that got rumbled after a while. And then even things like sun cream, people used to put sun cream on the ball. Whether it helps, whether it doesn't, who knows. But getting back to the other one, that's cheating, I suppose. Michael Atherton, dirt in his pocket trying to dry the ball. But he held his hands up, he was cheating. Scratching the ball.
Yeah.
You know, it happens. I used to soften the ball.
Yeah.
So if you're playing a one-day game, you got this white ball. It's hard for the first 5-10 overs. And then I used to get hold of it and I used to squeeze it so hard to soften the ball. Mm-hmm. So then when it bounces, it stays in the pitch a little bit. When it hits the bat, it doesn't come off as hard. They can't hit it as fast. So I used to try and soften the ball and squeeze it. Is that cheating? I don't know. Is that gamesmanship or using my initiative? I'm not quite sure.
Matthew,
just one thing going on back to...
diving.
Not diving, but I can relate it to cricket, where if someone nicks one behind and gets away with it, if he comes back in the dressing room, there's nobody saying... How dare you? Yeah. How dare you?
Actually, didn't they get on to Adam Gilchrist the other way when he walked? When he wasn't given out, they gave him a real bollocking.
It's like, well, hang on a minute, mate. We're trying to win this game. And this is the thing about sportsmen, which I understand. And when you talk about drugs and that, I've got no time for that. No time for that at all. I don't think anybody has.
Right. Yeah.
If you get caught, you get banned. I don't like this. What year ban? 18 months.
Ban for life.
Life is life.
I agree.
Life is life. Get out of here.
Yeah.
Unless... Can I just throw one caveat in? Unless they're prepared to say, I got it from this chemist, that coach, these are the other people involved. And then you can say,
still
ban them for
you're
life.
off. You're off on your bike.
Yeah, ban them for life.
I quite up that off on your bike. It's usually the cyclist. But as I was saying, I don't even know what I was saying. Do you know what I was saying? I was talking about diving. I was talking about nicking it behind. I was talking about Robbie saying gamesmanship over cheating. The one thing I know about myself, and I can probably put Robbie in this bracket as well, competition brings the best out in me. Mm-hmm. But it also brings the worst out in me. Because I am win at all costs.
Yeah, I'm the same, Fred.
When we spoke about in previous podcasts about the Olympics, you get a medal for second and third, which I don't understand. Yep. That is a mentality I have of winning. Yep. That is a mentality of the teams that I've played in. So if you can get one over, if you can do something which will help you win, I'll hold my hands up, rightly or wrongly. I'll go for it. And it's very hypocritical of me, and I've done it in previous things, talking about Rashford, talking about diving and all this and that. what would I do? I want to win.
I
mean,
wouldn't win.
but this is why this podcast
And I would
is great.
stretch the rules.
It's the
I would
honesty of
stretch
it.
the rules.
But
I was playing
it's
now.
the hypocrisy of some of these pundits who pretend that they were whiter than white, and yet they were prepared to stretch the rules in exactly the
I
same
stretch
way.
through, and I'll admit, so when I see these players going down far too easily now, when there's a minimal contact, I've been there and done it. What I never done, I never dived over fresh air, and for me that is cheating. And then that retrospective ban should be brought in to stop it.
Yeah.
When somebody gets hit in the chest and they hold their face, I done it just in Edinburgh, caught my hair, held my face, embarrassing. Now I should get
your nose though.
Yeah, he's close to the nose. I should get a 3-game ban now because it was wrong. Got a fellow player sent off. All that I agree with cheating, but when you're in high speed and it's clever play, mate, I win at all costs.
I think a lot of people listening.
Avoiding.
Can I just one?
Mate, avoiding contact not to get injured. What is that cheating?
Can I?
No, I don't think that is. I mean, the distinction that I made, I'm going to stand by. I think it's okay to exaggerate when a foul has been made on you in order to alert the referee. I think a lot of people will be listening to this thinking that it is wrong to deliberately deceive the referee to get a decision that your team didn't deserve. All I would say to the people listening is, why don't you boo your own players when they do that? Because I've never seen that in any stadium, anywhere in the country. And Robbie, let me just, I'll come to you, Fred, in just one second. Just one thing I'm fascinated by. When a player dives and they go back to the dressing room, am I right in thinking that the manager, the players, putting their arm around them going, well done, mate?
Well, if you've won a penalty and you think it was controversial, a manager wouldn't say, "Well done." Nothing would be said. But as a teammate, if it was that Marcus Rashford one, I'd have said, "Oh, great play, son."
You've never been criticised. You've never seen within a dressing room
honest.
a player being criticised.
Never once. Never, ever once.
Interesting.
And the thing is, I go back to before Fred comes in, people say about the generation, the future, the kids are watching their heroes on the TV, they'll learn all that. As I said, I've watched in the last 8 years, academy football down, I've never seen one kid dive.
Can I ask you one question?
Yeah.
Which is the short answer, because we've done a lot on this. Over the past week or so, we've heard about the Olympians and there's drugs cheats and the world records pre-2005, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then we've seen some of our Olympians coming out saying, oh, my record should stand. And where do you lie on that?
I think that the credibility problem in athletics is a lot of people are winning gold medals who are cheating and they're not getting caught, or they're not getting caught for 10 or 15 years, and it's making a farce of the sport. In order to address that credibility issue, you need to catch more cheats. Going back to Jonathan Edwards' triple jump record in whenever it was 22 years ago and getting rid of that doesn't help credibility at all. It's the illusion of credibility. So I'm totally against it. I think that if Edwards, who has not a scrap of evidence against him, and did that magnificent leap, taking the record away from him because other people have cheated and the governing body is struggling to catch them, that's an outrage.
Mike Powell, he broke Bob Beeman's record. Am I right?
Yeah.
Mike Powell, the long jump.
Yeah,
Wasn't
8
expecting
metres.
that, Rob.
23-year-old record. Good knowledge, that, eh?
Yeah.
I like my sport.
I agree with you, Matt.
Yeah.
Nice.
Robbie?
Mike Powell's record shouldn't be taken away.
None of them should, until you've got the evidence.
Mean.
Yeah. Our final topic today, it's National Mental Health Awareness Week, and we really wanted to talk about it on this week's podcast. This is something, Freddie, you've been incredibly honest and open about. I think you've been a real force for change and destigmatising this as an issue. Me and Robbie will join in with this as well as we go along. But what's your take on the issue of mental health in sport? Where do you think we're at in terms of being able to address it? Are a lot of people still suffering in silence? Where do you stand on it all?
Yeah, I think, you mentioned that this week is Mental Health Week. So it's a subject which everyone's talking about. And I think in recent light as well, we saw only a few days ago, Aaron Lennon, that terrible, terrible story where he's obviously having his problems. And it's something which has been highlighted now for a period of time. The Princes, William and Harry, have got this big Heads Together campaign, which I've been a part of. And we've seen the likes of Professor Green speaking out. We've seen people from the public. And one of the things I want to say before we go on is that everyone's got this thing about mental health. And what I want to say is people aren't coming out to try and get sympathy or become victims. I think people are speaking out to try and make a change.
Yep.
One of the first things they talk about is identifying and talking about it, which sounds so simple if you're suffering, but it has a massive effect. Almost when you tell someone for the first time, the weight off your shoulders is absolutely massive. And I can understand when people look at it and they hear people in the public eye, sports people, musicians, actors, and they look at people from the outside and they think, well, what's he going to be depressed about? Or why is he struggling? They've got everything. They've got a bit of money. They've got this, that. They've had great careers. But mental health is not a selective illness. It's not like affects people from a certain background, a certain race, a certain class type.
Yep.
It can affect anyone. I think the numbers are something like 1 in 4 people in the country are affected either directly or indirectly. And getting on to me, I am one of those people. It's something which, I'll be honest with you, I look back at my life and I think, when did it start? And I can't really put a finger on it. But then you start identifying behaviour even as a child and growing up and playing, where you see the traits of suffering from depression. You know, you isolate, things are never good enough. And people think when you feel depressed, you feel sad, and it isn't that. I can handle being sad because I know it's going to change. When you're depressed, it's like this strange state of mind where the world just passes on by you. You can't get a thought in your head. You feel guilty for something you don't feel guilty about. You almost feel guilty for feeling guilty. And it's like the shutter's coming down on you and everything's going on around you and you can't focus, you can't look people in the eye, you can't speak. And it's something which is affecting a hell of a lot of people out there from sport, from all similar backgrounds. And weeks like this week and people speaking out have got to help. For me, in cricket, there's been quite a few high-profile cases. One of my best friends, Steve Harmison, suffered all the way through his career, and I saw him go through it, and I saw what it was like. I saw him on days when he couldn't get off the floor. Everyone thought he was lazy. Everyone thought it was this or that, but the problem was far deeper. And now it's nice that people are identifying it. Back in the day, they got a clip round the head, and they say, "Come on, get on with it." Marcus Trescothick came home famously from a tour, and people look at cricket and think, "Why is there such a problem in cricket? Why is cricket so bad for depression?" And it's not actually. Cricket's doing really well because people are coming out and people are speaking about it. And through guys like that, it's given me the chance to address some of the issues in my life and move forward. But is it like within football?
What was your listen to you? So, did you have a low point, the lowest of the low points, and who helped you get out of the? Do
you know what? If you look at my career. I never found that consistency. I was never a consistent player, and I think as a person, I've never been particularly consistent. I've always had their massive highs and massive lows. So, do you know one of the things I found was when I was playing and did well and we won, I'd celebrate hard, and then the next day it'd be like, right, is that it? I never enjoyed it as much as everyone else. I didn't like the attention, and then I'd steadily or quite sharply drop back down to rock bottom. And
rock bottom is where? Where's rock bottom?
Rock bottom is you can't get out of bed, you can't get off your couch, you can't hold a conversation with someone, you can't look people in the eye. I'll be sat at home, and it happens every now and then now where I'll be sat there and everything's going on around me in the house. There'll be people around and people talking, and I don't even know what's going on. I can't get a thought in my head. I want to desperately get involved in a chat with someone, but I can't. I move my mouth and nothing comes out. It's
Do you know that documentary did on the telly? I thought that was quite a landmark thing because when I watched it, it opened my eyes to some of the issues that are at play, and you've described so well. How difficult was it for you to be open about the weakness and the vulnerability and the difficulties? Because to me, there's still a sense that it's a sign, people still think it's a sign of weakness. There's something odd about it. How difficult was that step for you?
Do you know what? I'll be really honest with you. I wanted to do the documentary. It was my idea, and we pitched it to the BBC, and they let us do it. And my initial reasons for doing it was Steve. Steve had struggled. Right. I wanted to highlight what Steve had been through. I wanted him to have his say. And then we got so many great contributors. We had Ricky Hatton, we had Graham Dott, we had Neil Lennon, Vinnie Jones. Piers Morgan gave a press angle, which was brilliant. He got hammered for it, but he gave a proper opinion. Yeah. And the thing for me was I didn't plan on giving as much away about myself as I did.
Right.
I thought I'm just going to host a documentary and ask a few questions. And the more it went on and I was asking people, it was almost like a bit of therapy for me. And it was the final piece in the jigsaw where the penny drops. I see, I'm in the same boat as him. Because Ricky was telling me about some of the reasons he drank. You're talking about drink, and I've stopped drinking. I'm not drunk for 2.5 years, give or take.
Fantastic.
And I realised the reason I was drinking was because I wanted to escape something. I'd have 4 or 5 pints and feel, top of the world again. I'd have 15 and I get onto the spirits, and then the next day drink is a depressive and I feel like I just want the world to end. It was awful, and I identified that in Ricky. Neil Lennon was talking about some of his experiences.
Yeah.
Graham Dott, he talks about he was number 1 in the world.
Yeah.
He was playing, he started crying, he was hiding behind his hanky. And I thought, you know what? I was like that in the West Indies during the World Cup. I had no emotion. I took a wicket. And the more it went on, and I'd already identified a little bit through Steve, and I thought, wow. And I started speaking about what I wanted to say or how I felt. And my initial thought was, am I doing the right thing here? I'm not sure about this, because people have bought into me. Fans, people who follow you on social media, or they buy the clothes you sell, or whatever you're doing, people have bought into this image of what you're like and this persona that you've built up over the years. And you're effectively telling them that is not the real case. And you're bearing it, and this is me. So I put myself out there, and you know what? To anyone who is suffering, and do you know what? Even if it's not depression, or just nip it in the bud, just talk about it. And the relief I got from the reaction from people was completely different to what I thought it was going to be. I have people coming up to me now in the street. I've got friends talking to me about it, how they feel, which I never expected. So the reaction was complete opposite to how I thought. And it also gave me a chance to address certain areas in my life, retirement, it's like all of a sudden you lose your identity, and just when you think you're getting somewhere, it all starts again. And now, I have my ups and downs, and it hits me every now and then. I'll be honest with you, I probably had a bout of it just over the past couple of weeks. But I know it's going to pass. I know how to deal with it. I've got coping mechanisms. I am on medication. And the way I normalise that is, if I was playing cricket and I had a bad leg, I'd take an anti-inflammatory.
Yeah.
If I had an headache, I'd have an aspirin or a paracetamol. If there's something wrong with me, I'll go and see the doctor. My head's no different. If there's something wrong with me, I'm taking something to help that. And they're not happy pills. I don't take a pill and then I'm seeing unicorns and rainbows. I just start feeling normal after a few weeks. And that's how it is for me.
But when you're at your lowest point, you didn't ever think the worst case scenario of finishing it all?
No, I didn't. Do you know what you toy with? You don't toy with it. Do you know when your lowest point? I was the happiest when I was in bed, right? And I was the happiest when I was asleep. I love sleeping anyway. I could sleep on a washing line, so I probably won't look too much into it. But I was at my happiest in bed, happiest when I was asleep. And then you think, well, why would I not be asleep all the time? Now, I've never said that before, and I didn't have suicidal thoughts, and I didn't realistically think about anything like that. But it's like, there's a fine line to thinking like that and then taking the next step. And we've seen it with like your Gary Speed, friend of yours, and you've seen these guys. And when you talk about something like that, and everyone focuses on the people who've been left behind, and people say, oh, how could somebody do that? And you got to think of it from the person who's done its point of view. And I'm able to do that now. I think, well, he knew that. He knew the reaction. He knew what's going to be left behind. Can you imagine how he felt to actually go through with something like that? I had a friend who works on A League of Their Own, one of the big producers. He did a similar thing. And you think, and do you know the sad thing about that was nobody knew. We see him all the time. His closest friends never knew. He comes in, and I can relate to that. You can turn up to work, you can put a face on, you can play the crowd, and then you get home, and you're a different person. You don't know what happens behind closed doors. And things like this week with the Mental Health Week, it's got to help. It's got to help.
Thanks, Fred. Robbie, you've got family experience of mental illness.
Well, my father, I read his letter out on a previous podcast. Alzheimer's, Pick's disease, had it at 58, passed away at 63. To experience, my mother was his carer, his sole carer. She didn't want to put him in a home because she just couldn't let him go, and she was his sole carer. And eventually when he did pass away, he died of pneumonia, and it's horrible to witness a man with a mental disease. Really, you've got to call it. To look at you and to look straight through you. But the saving grace I had was sport. There's a thing called Sport of Memories, and I remember, and the last 17 weeks of his life, he was in hospital. And, you go every day, and I was travelling too, my mum, my brother. And this might sound a bit harsh. There was times, and as much as I hate to say it, and I might get a bit criticised for it, but when I lived in Manchester, my father was in the Wrexham Mile Hospital. You get in the car and you're driving there, and you're thinking, what's the point? I'm going to get there. It's my dad. He hasn't got a clue who I am.
How did that feel, Rob?
Horrendous, mate. Horrendous. You're driving there. Every time I left, I was in tears, thinking, that's my dad. Do you know what I'm not going to see him again. Do you know what I mean? It was.
And this was somebody who was like one of your great mentors,
Yeah.
coach.
It was horrendous. And, but the sporting memories, which they do. I remember I was in the hospital bed and Football Focus come on the TV. I'll never forget it. And football was on it, and he looked at the TV and he looked at me and he brought a little smile to his face. So somewhere in there, sport, he just looked at me and looked at the TV and the football. And I knew he knew where I was at that moment. Do you know what I mean? But I'll never forgive myself. And, I've not told this to many people, but, those trips I used to go every day to Wrexham. The day he died, I wasn't there. I'll never forgive myself for that. It's horrible. All those days I went, and it was like I thought he'd have lasted a bit longer. On the first day I wasn't there, he passed away, and it was terrible. So, yeah, pretty tough, living with people with mental illness. Pretty tough.
Just do you know, Rob, if it's obviously something that you've seen and lived through, but if there's people out there going through the same things, is there anything?
It's just so hard. Yeah, it's so hard, Fred, because the family where you were saying about people, they know what they're leaving behind. My dad didn't know what he was leaving behind because he didn't. He was in his own little world, and it was just my mum every day going to the hospital, and but even though he didn't know who she was or who I was, and it's very difficult, but I just wish, spend as much time as you can with these people because, they're not going to be there forever. It's hard, but it's tough.
And being there for your mum.
Yeah, my mum, I mean, she's on her own now, but, it's hard. But, I've said it before, for that period of time when my father was ill, I lost my mother as well because she was his sole carer. She couldn't leave the house. She loved that man. She's the only man she'd ever had, in her life, and they were together all the time, and they were saving for the future, but the future was no more. But they could save. They didn't. They enjoyed life together. So, when you have somebody with Alzheimer's, and people underestimate Alzheimer's, like they underestimate mental health, like Freddie just alluded to, because they can't see it. They can't see it. And my father was accused of being a drunk. He was accused of all kinds in the early days because people didn't understand what he had because they slurred his words. He was quite aggressive, but this was all signs of Pick's disease. Yep. So, it's so important that, as Freddie's alluded to, with mental health issues, people actually do something about it. That's why I'm now an ambassador for Alzheimer's. And Freddie does his mental health things. It's brilliant, but it is. But sport and the sporting memories thing for Alzheimer's is brilliant.
Thanks, Rob. Fred, you mentioned Trescothick, who came back from the 2006 tour
of India.
Yeah.
Do you know the worst thing about that was? Well, not the worst thing, but one of the things which I think as a group of players and that I'd known Marcus since I was 16. He was my first under-19 captain, and I'd tour with him, I'd play with him. Although, I didn't have that relationship I had with Steve Armisen or, say, Rob Key. Good friends, but didn't have a clue. And then you've got a team, and we've spoken about team spirit and we're talking about team unity in the past, and nobody knew. And, you have these relationships with friends, with teammates, with people that you spend all this time with. And a lot of it made me realise, especially in the past few years, that a lot of relationships are very superficial. You have the crack and you have the laugh and you take the mickey out of each other. And you don't actually know how people are feeling or what people are going through. And to be honest with Rob, even 2 weeks ago, he could see that I was not as I usually am. And then I'm getting text messages off Rob. And I tell you what, do you know what? And I've not said this to Rob, but when you get a message like that, it makes so much difference.
I knew he was struggling.
Yeah.
I knew he wasn't right. And even Stanley, we've got good friends now. We're probably best pals now, and it's amazing that not because with kind of celebrities. People say, "Oh, you know each other because you're like that kind of." We're mates because we are proper mates now. And I knew he wasn't right 2 weeks ago, and I was texting him every day, and because I knew, I said to Stanley, Fred's not right. We've got to keep texting him. We've got to keep making sure he's okay, because I knew he wasn't right.
That support network makes a big difference, knowing that people are thinking and caring about you.
Yeah.
You think it's and you're right, it's too superficial, isn't it? In so many different environments, not just sport, but in offices and workplaces.
It made me think about your mates and the people you knock around with, and you know them, but then you think, well, do I really? Do I really know what people are thinking? Do I really know what he's going through? All right, I'm just using the gym as an example. It's not like a problem, but I got these mates, and you go to the gym, and you have your crack in the coffee shop, and you take the mickey out of each other, and it's very similar to a dressing room culture. But then you think, well, do I know what it's like for these lads when they go home? And I think now with our group of mates, we do now, don't we?
Yeah.
I think it's changed, and my relationships, I don't know if it's an age thing or knowing what I've been through, I think my relationships with people have changed, but it also has changed for negative. I've lost mates, I've upset people, I've done all sorts, and I don't know if it's because people can't accept how you are, or whether they look at their own lives or they look at their own selves, but I suppose at times I can be quite awkward to be around, but it's through no fault of my own. It's not because I don't like people. It's just that, sometimes I just need a bit of a time out. Is it something you've experienced, Matthew? Or...
Yeah. So it's difficult to talk about because, and I think this is an example of how the stigma is still in play. Sorry, I don't want to jump in. Do you know when people mention stigma? I know it's a buzzword at the minute, and everyone's saying breaking down the stigma, and I hear it all the time. And for me, it's a word that shouldn't be used, because I know they're trying to stop it. But if someone has a conversation with you and says "no offense," but they're going to offend you. And I find stigma like that. When you start using, it's not a criticism of you, Matthew. When you use the word stigma, it's almost you're talking about something which is an issue to talk about. And I genuinely don't see it as an issue to talk about now. It's a piece of me. It doesn't define me. This is something I deal with for 15, 20% of my life. The rest of it's fantastic. So I'm quite open about it. But well, in our family, the person who has severe mental illness and has done for 30 years, over 30 years, won't publicly talk about it. So I can't talk about this person. I'd love to be able to get him into a position where he's prepared to talk about it. I think it would probably help. But I think that's why I use that word that you don't like, and I know why you don't like it. He feels that it's something to be embarrassed about, even though I just wish, because he could be a really strong ambassador. The pressure it puts on the family dynamic is interesting because, I don't want to say who is the main carer because it will give away who the person is, but the carer has to spend most of her waking life thinking about this person. It puts pressure on her relationship, puts pressure on the other children. There isn't a huge amount of support for the carers out there, and they do an incredible job, and they're giving of themselves, their innermost part of their heart, to the person who's really suffering. It's had a small impact on my career. I've had to miss certain trips abroad when things have been particularly difficult. I've mentioned it to a couple of very close friends, and what struck me is that each of the two of the three people I mentioned it to had people that they knew well who suffered from the same condition. And that was something of a help to me anyway, because it just makes you realise you're not alone. But perhaps just to close this off, first of all, thanks for being so open about how it's affected both of you. Do you think that sport in particular is in a place now where people feel they can be open. I've got to tell you, Fred, I think you've been a massive force for good in this space. I mentioned the documentary hit me really, really hard. Trescothick, when he came back in 2006, blamed it on a virus because of course, he didn't want to admit because it might have been vulnerable or weakness.
And then Steve, or everyone thought he was lazy, and everyone thought he was this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
And I got so frustrated because I knew I was, we have a relationship which was like brothers, and we roomed together, and I knew what he was going through, and I was like, and everyone, and I had to bite my lip, like teammates, coaches, media. Oh, I'm army lazy, don't want to do this.
Where do you think we are now as a culture in this? Do you think people can be open? Do you think people are still getting judged for being open?
I think just by the fact that, I've spoken quite a little bit about it, and the reaction that I've got towards it from being someone who was very nervous about doing so. And I remember watching that documentary I did for the BBC, and usually I'm nervous about stuff going out for different reasons. It might be rubbish, but on this one I was nervous by the reaction. And I've never sat and watched social media as much while that was going out, and the reaction was the complete opposite, and so much better than I could ever thought. And I think from a sporting environment, cricket, the fellow called Jason Ratcliffe, who's sadly not with the PCA now, the Players Cricket Association, it was his initiative really, where there's a helpline for cricketers. And as I said before, people think cricket's got a problem. It hasn't. It's leading the way, and other sports can follow, and society. But anyone out there, even if you've got an inkling, even if you feel and something's not quite right, you don't feel like the way you used to, or you don't enjoy things the way in which you used to, or you're feeling that you're getting these moods which you can't explain, just find out. It's not a big deal. But once you do find out, for me, one of the things when you do a test when you go and see someone, and you fill this questionnaire and you get a point system. And I filled it in, and then the therapist said, you're clinically depressed. And I was like, oh, really, mate? But it was being told that for me was a massive breakthrough. And I didn't fear being told. It was almost as if, great, it is something. It is something which there's a word for it, there's a name for it. I can deal with it now. Not knowing was harder. And then you try and self-medicate with drink, with food, with gym, with other things. Where now, I got to be careful on that. But I think I don't know if I'm winning, but
you are winning.
I'm
doing all right.
You're definto winning.
I think the thing that disgusted me, and absolutely did disgust me, and Ferry alluded to it, there's the word again, alluded to it earlier, was about people think, like a footballer, they've got money. I seen a headline in a newspaper, £50,000 a week player.
Oh my word! Yeah.
It disgusted me. It disgusted me, and my fear is, Matthew, and we've talked about retirement. There's a lot of footballers out there who are depressed or have mental health issues and don't speak about it because
that reason.
And the worry is that in the future, God only knows what could be out there, because the worry is, I think there's a lot of footballers who financially maybe haven't told their wives, if they've got into things, if there's, they're drinking because they can't get that buzz of playing sport, they're hiding stuff. I think the worry is there's a lot of footballers out there who might be obviously very, very depressed. I haven't said anything.
Do you know the strange thing is with it? Right, it's really weird. In a crisis, I'm brilliant. If something bad happens, I'm brilliant. I can think logically, I can sort it, I can do it. But then sometimes, the smallest thing, the tiniest thing that you think, and I hate myself for getting all, and then it'd be like just someone to say one word, bang, here it comes, and then you feel it coming, the shutters are coming down, and here we go again. Well,
what kind of a thing would it be? Just
it can be something so trivial. So trivial, just one word from someone, or someone will say something, or I get an email, or it can be. It's usually the tiniest thing that sets me off. It's weird, and then you sat there and you're watching Storage Wars for 3 weeks. you don't even know how much money they made at the end of it. You can't focus. I'm gutted.
Guys, thanks, Fred. Thanks, Sav. And thank you for listening. You can download the podcast for extended versions of all the topics we've covered this week at the 5 Live website and all the usual podcast places. Please use the hashtag FredSavSide to get in touch with us through the week. If you could leave a review on iTunes and give us a rating and review, that would be great. A big thank you for everyone who's done that already. We really appreciate it. We'll be back next week at the same time. But for now, from all of us, goodbye.
If you've been affected by the issues raised in this podcast and would like details of organisations which offer advice and support, go online to bbc.co.uk/actionline, or you can call for free at any time to hear recorded information on 0800 066 066.
Flintoff, Savage and the Ping Pong Guy.
Thank you for downloading the Flintoff, Savage and the Ping Pong Guy podcast. If you like what you hear, then why not have a look at what else 5 Live podcasts have to offer at bbc.co.uk/5live.